Kakalosh Boker Or, Masechet Chullin Daf Yomi Daf Lamed Hey. So we're going to be doing today Daf Lamed Hey Amudal 35a1. We're starting where it says Deleka Kazai Bichdei Achila Pras. So we're starting right now. Amar Rabbi Yonatan Amar Rebbe. Says Rabbi Yonatan Amar Rebbe. So this is right the first line. Amar Rabbi Yonatan Amar Rebbe. Okay. So we're talking about now if somebody's going to eat Ochlin Tmin. Haochel Shlishi Shel Truma Atzma. If somebody's going to eat Shlishi of Truma itself, which means the Truma in itself. Okay, so now he becomes a shlishi. So asul lechol umutar ligaba. So he's not allowed to eat it, but he's allowed to touch it. Remember that by chulin, it never becomes a shlishi, right? Truma could become a shlishi, and kodesh 35, and kodesh could become a revi. Okay, so he comes down and he says like this: ve'itzrich, and you need that which Ula says. Ve'itzrich the Rabbi Yonatan, you need Rabbi Yonatan. Why? Mi'ula, from the deen of Ula, Havamina, I would have thought to say that if somebody is going to eat a shlishi, his body is going to be nifsal gufo from eating truma, but he's at least mutar to touch the truma. But hanimin, one of these words, bechulin shenasal tarat truma, only by chulin that you're doing it like truma. Aval truma, but truma itself, you're not allowed to even touch it. Because if you became tameh, that's it. So you're not allowed even to touch the truma itself. The itzich, and therefore I need Rabbi Yonatan. That's why the Rabbi Yonatan came and told you, no, you're just not allowed to eat it, but you're allowed to touch it. The even the Rabbi Yonatan, but if it was going to be because of Rabbi Yonatan, Havamina, I would have had Havamina, Hanamila, when are these words? Only by the Truma Mamash, but Chulin, right? But the Chulin, which is done like Truma, meaning that, like, for example, you're a Kohen. So, for example, that they used to eat the Chulin al Tarat Truma to make, because it's very difficult to say, no, this is Chulin, I could be Tameh or whatever it is, but also, this is Truma, no, now I have to be Taur. So many times they used to eat the Chulin al Taharat Truma. That means Ki'ilu it was Truma. So he comes and he says, Bachilana mishari. So I would have thought to say that even you're allowed to eat it, right? So therefore he comes and he says, Slicha, that's why you needed both cases. You needed also Ula and also Rabbi Yonatan. Yativ Rav Yitzchak bar Shmuel bar Marta kamed Rabbi Nachman was sitting Rav Yitzchak bar Shmuel bar Marta in front of Rav Nachman. V'yativ v'kamar, and he was sitting and he said, Ha'ochel shlishi shel chulin shnasal tarat HaKodesh. If you eat a shlishi of chulin, which was done on tarat HaKodesh, tahor, right? You're completely tahor. And therefore, you're even tahor to eat kodesh. She'en lecha davar she'oseh revi'i bekodesh, ela kodesh mekudash bilvad. The only thing that can ever become a revi'i is only the kodshim in itself, right? Which is kodesh gamur. Okay, so that's the only thing. What? Mati Rami Bar Chama. So Rami Bar Chama comes and he asks the following question: Shlishi sheni lekodesh ve'en sheni letruma. Right? If somebody is going to be eat a shlishi, so his body becomes a sheni for kodesh, but there's no sheni to do with truma. Right? Now the question is, what chulin do you have that's a shlishi? There's no such thing as shlishi by chulin. So obviously it has to be chulin, which is done al tara truma. So says the Gemara, Amai, why? Halav kodesh mikudashu. It's not kodesh mikudash. Yeah. So he come and he says like this. He says, right? We know why. We know that the shlishi is not kodesh mikudashu. So he come and he says, Amale hanach letruma shetarata tuma yitzel kodesh, which means like this. Rav Yitzchak comes and he answers to Rami Bar Chama that the shlishi of chulin, which is done on tarat truma, is like the Tara of Truma, and that's considered Tum'ah by Kodesh, right? Because remember that the Truma is one level below than Kodesh. So for not because you're keeping the Tahara of Truma, is it mean that you're keeping the Tahara of Kodesh, because Kodesh is one more level that you could become Tameh. So you have to actually be very, very careful. How do you know this? The Tanam was we learned in the Mishnah, Bigdei Amaretz is Midras Leprushin. The clothing of Amaretz is considered tumat midras for the chaverim that they eat even chulin betara. Bigde prushin, the begadim the prushim is considered midras for the ochle truma, and the bigde ochle truma is considered midras for the kodesh, because you see that there's different levels. Meaning the amaretz, even on the chulin, is everything's tameh, right? The prushin, which are the chaverim, they eat chulin betara, but their clothing is still going to be tameh biyachas to truma. And the ochle truma is going to be tameh biyachas to the kodesh, because each one is a higher level of kedusha of with tuma and tara. So Amar Rava comes and he says midrasot kamarta. Who's talking about now tumat midras? He says why? Shane midrasot. It's different. The tumat midras, right? It says lamed hamud bet. Shema tesheva len ishto. because it could be that his wife is going to sit down on it when she's a nida, and she made it tameh betumat midras, and therefore it's actually common. So because of that, even though the ones that are eating truma for sure, right, they're going to be careful. Nevertheless, to do with kodesh, they weren't somech on the shmira. Aval bepeire, but to do with tumat ochlin of fruits, which means of truma, right, which is one level below lo amrina. We weren't talking about that because basically the fact that they're going to be watching over betahara, the chachamim do not come and start suspecting for that it's going to become tameh. So you can't bring a proof from the Mishnah to do with Rabbi Yitzchak to do a taharat of truma, right? Because again, as we already mentioned, right, there's going to be a difference between the tumat midras of tumat ochlin. Now Rabbi Yitzchak comes and he says, pere nami amar. Also in perot, it's the same thing, right? That means just like chachamim come and they suspect for midras, they're going to suspect also for tumat perot, also the same way. So Mativ Rabbi Yomi Medifti, so Rabbi Yomi Medifti comes and he asks the following question: Umi amrinan beperi? Do we actually say that by the halachot of perot of truma that it's considered tameh to do with kodesh? But now we learned in the Mishnah, Imamar ifrashti letucharavid lekodesh. Imagine right now an amaretz comes and he tells to the kohen to do with a chavit yain of truma that I separated, right, inside of it a revi'it lug of yain for kodesh. Neeman, he's going to be believed, right? That all the wine in the chavit is going to be tahor. Velo kametame le truma le kodesh, and it's not going to be metameh for yain for kodesh. V'yamart, now if you're going to tell me tarata tumati yitzel kodesh, that the tara is going to be tum'av by kodesh, tetemeh truma le kodesh, so the make it's going to be tameh, right? What does that mean? That means even though we believe the Ma'aretz, that he watched the wine, right, from tum'ah, nevertheless, before it was already going to be separating a revit of kodesh inside, he didn't watch it for tarat truma. So Amar Lei, so he comes and he says, Tuma bechiburin kamarta? Are you talking about now Tum'ah and chiburin? What does that mean? We're talking about now Tum'ah, right? Which is going to be mechubar in one keli, because here we're talking about that it was in the same keli. Tuma bechiburin shane demigud me'emana kodesh me'emana metruma. Meaning the fact that he is believed on kodesh to do with the mizbeach, so he's also going to be believed on the truma. Usually we don't believe him on the truma. Here we are going to believe him on the truma. So Mativ Ravuna Bar Natan asks Ravuna Bar Natan, Sheni shebechulim tameh mashki chulim. Right? Remember that ochlin and mashkin are usually not the same halacha. So here he says, Sheni bechulin is going to be metameh a mashke of chulin. Okay, so if you have mashkin that touched the sheni, it also becomes tameh, and they could be mavirid zehala. Okay, now he says that means to do with ochlin, it's not metameh at all. Okay, because there's no shlishi in chulin. But here to do with mashkin, yes. Uposel ochle truma. Now, if the sheni of ochlin of truma comes, right, and it makes it into a shlishi, they're called pasul. You remember the difference between pasul and metameh was that pasul, the buck stops here. It cannot continue being metameh other things. When it said, that's when it says pasul or posel, right? When it says metameh, it means it continues going hala, it continues going forward. Vashlishi metameh mashke kodesh. And the shlishi of chulin is going to be metameh mashke of kodesh. And it's going to be posel ochle kodesh. So again, remember, it's metameh and posel. Posel means that it stops after that, and the metameh is to continue going. Bechulin shenasa, right? So says the Gemara. Now the question though is, if you're going to tell me now that it touched the ochlin of kodesh, it's pasul. It's not metameh. So what are we talking about then? So obviously we're talking about chulin shenasal tarat kodesh. Obviously it means that it's chulin that you were acting as if there was kodesh, right? And therefore that's why we said, right, that it's going to be like such a high level, because you're eating it ki'ilu it's kodesh, even though it's regular food. It's regular chulin food, but you're eating it as if it's a korban. Okay, so this is going to be the question against Rabbi Yitzchak. So he says, Tanaihi, you're right. It's machloket Tanaim. Tanya was learned in a Braita, right? Chulin shenasal tarat kodesh, aren kechulin. Any chulin which is done like ki'ilu that it's kodesh, it's like chulin, and therefore it will never become a shlishi. Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Tzadok omer, aren ketruma, it's like truma. Letameh shnayim v'lifsol echad, that it could become tameh as the rishon of the sheni, and it's going to be posel the shlishi as well. Okay, that means the rishon and the sheni is mamash tmeim, and the shlishi is pasul. Okay, but it doesn't make it into a revi. So from the words of Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Tzadok, we're actually going to learn that a shlishi of chulin shenasal tarat kodesh does not make a revi. Okay, so he says, Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Shimon says, huchsheru b'shchita. What does that mean? It makes it susceptible for the tum'ah by the shchita. Okay, So he says, Ve'amar Ravasi says, Rabbi Shimon, shchitato machsheret velo dam. It's going to be machsheret to be mekabel tuma, but not the blood which comes out of it. Okay, so let me say, Rabbi Shimon Amar uksheru b'shchita. Are we not talking about now the shchita, not the blood? So says the Gemara, no. Even the shchita, even in the shchita, right? Really, be'emet Rabbi Shimon is modeh that the blood of the shchita is machshir, like the Tanakama. But he's adding on that the shchita itself is also going to be machshir, even if there's no blood at all. Meaning, you remember we said that in order for something to become accessible for Tumah, you need one of the 7 mashkin to come in contact with it. Yad Shachad Dam. Now, Dam is one of the Yad Shachad Dam, right? The Dalit of Dam is Dam. So therefore, blood. So therefore, does that make it susceptible for Tumah or not? We already saw there was a machloket. Here he's going like the opinion that it does make it susceptible for Tumah. But the chidush here is that even if no blood came out at all, the shchita in itself already made it susceptible for Tumah. So he comes and he says, Tashema. So let's try to bring a proof then. So he says, Amala and Rabbi Shimon says, Rabbi Shimon, the chiyadam machshir. It's the shchita is machshir. What do I care about the blood? When a person does shchita, I need the blood to be machshir the shchita. It's the shchita in itself that is machshir. So Tashema, so he comes and he said, Rabbi Shimon Omer, dam amet eno machshir. When you have the dam of an animal that dies on its own, right? An animal just dropped dead. It's not machshir. My lover, we're not talking about the dam of shchita that it is going to be machshir. So says the Gemara, no, we're talking about dam chalalim, which is going to be machshir, which means the dam of an animal that was killed without shechita. So that is going to be machshir, right, for a mashke, because it says the dam chalalim yishteh. So from there we're learning, right, that it is davka dam chalalim and not dam shechita. Aval dam shechita, what's the halacha? You're going to tell me now, lo machshir, it's not going to be machshir. So lishmein and dam shechita vekol shken dam amet. Tell me dam shechita, right? And therefore, if it's not going to be machshir, right, because it's going to be, even though it was hukash to the mayim, there was a kesh between the mayim, what am I going to say? That it's going to be damamet, meaning like this. We learn that dam is machshir. It's one of the machshirim. It's one of the liquids. Which type of blood? Is it tavka blood, which is dam shechita? Is it dam chalalim? What exactly? So we make a kesh dam to mayim. That just like mayim is machshirim, so to dam is machshir. But what's halacha here? Which type of dam are we talking about? So why don't we just teach dam shechita and kol sheken then dam amet? So says the Gemara, dam amet itzichle. We need a dam amet. Why? Sal kadat. I mean, I would have thought to say mali kat leiu mali kale malach hamavet. What do I care if it died on its own, if it was a malach hamavet, or I killed it? It's the same thing, and therefore it's going to be susceptible for tumah. Kamash Malan comes to teach you that it's not true. Dam amet is not machshir. Okay, meaning if it dies on its own, it's not that blood that comes out afterwards is not machshir lekabel tuma. So says the Gemara, okay, fine. Let's try to bring another proof then. Tashema Rabbi Shimon omer dam magafato. What about dam makah? Imagine right now somebody the animal comes and it gets a makah and it starts bleeding. So it's not machshir. That blood is not machshir. My lover, we're not talking about hadam shchita that it is machshir. Says the Gemara, no. Hadam chalalim machshir. Only the dam of shchita, we weren't talking about that. We were talking about dam chalalim. So dam shchita, what's the halacha then? It's not going to be machshir. So why don't we learn dam shchita and kol shken dam makah? Says the Gemara, dam makah is the chidush. Why? Sal kadad, I would have thought to say mali kat lekula, mali kat lepalga. Remember that when a person gets a wound and he loses blood, it's a partial killing because the dam wa nafesh, right? So since the dam is wa nafesh, so therefore it's partly killing the guy. You're right. He didn't kill him completely, but he did kill part of him. And that's why he has to replenish the blood and replenish it. So therefore he comes and he says, I would have had a havamina that since there's no difference between katle kula and katle palga, so therefore I would have thought to say that really be'emet, right? We would come and we would say that we're not going to say dam magafato is not going to be machshir for the kabel tuma. So says the Gemara, Maishna dam chalalim te machshir. So why is it dam chalalim without shechita is machshir, right? Dichtiv dam chalalim ishteh. So dam shechita nami. It's written, alaretz tishpechenu kamay. You spill the blood on the floor, right? So therefore, it should also be metame. Not metame, machshir, sorry. It should be machshir for tuma. So says the Gemara, hahul lemisher daman lepsule mukdashim banaudata. There we're talking about the blood, which is coming, that is going to say that it's going to become, to permit the blood from the psule mukdashim. That means when you have a psule mukdashim, you've got something of ekdesh that became pasul. Now you redeem it. So the blood is now going to become mutar vana. Okay? So therefore, what happens is, and that's going to be the chidush. Sal kadaita, I mean, I would have thought to say lamevav mudalef on the top. Right? Hoil vasirei. Begizav avodah. The fact that psulam mukdashim, you're not allowed to shear its wool, you're not allowed to do avodah with it. So I would have thought to say the man, right? Maybe also the blood is going to be a surbana. Therefore, you have to bury the blood. Kamashmalan comes to teach you that through the Ekdesh, that the dam, the blood of Sulem Gdoshin, is like the water, which means just like water is mutar bana, so to Sulem Gdoshin, the blood is going to be mutar bana. And then we continue going again, which type of blood is machshir or not. We're still in the middle. We didn't actually finish off with what we spoke about.